All right, so let's just dive right in. We've got just a blank piece of paper here. I'm just going to do the first piece of paper. This is going to be our final page, so I brought my eraser as well, just to kind of erase any of the extra marks that we get. But I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm assuming that you guys know how to use the ruler correctly. So usually on rulers, there's this little extra bit that's kind of meant just in case there's like any dings to the ruler. So usually your ruler starts right here at this first mark, and that is actually your beginning mark. On top of that, these marks in between the ones that actually hit the bottom here are your half-inch marks. We're going to need to know that for this time. So for the first step, I'm going to go ahead and put my ruler over to the paper. I want to make sure that the top that measures 0 is all the way at the top. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to measure 1.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and make a single mark right at 1.5 inches. I'm going to flip my ruler. Let's try not to move the paper too much. I'm going to come over on the other side and I'm going to mark 1.5 inches. It's always better to have 2 points that you're marking because your lines will end up straight. If you try to eyeball it, most of the time it ends up really, really bad. All right, so we've got our first line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my paper. You can do this as well. I'm going to go ahead, and this is just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That's why I can do this. So we want our square to be, or our rectangle to end up being 8 inches by 6 inches. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I just did 1.5 inches again. I'm going to come over to this side. I'm going to do 1.5 inches again. So it's the same thing that we did for the other side. We're just doing the same exact process. This should give us, if I take 1.5 inches off the top and 1.5 inches off the bottom, it will give us 8 inches in between. And a good way to check that is just to take your ruler, come over to one of the sides, put it on the 0 mark here, and then make sure that you go to 8 inches. All right, so next up, I'm going to go ahead and put my ruler down here, and I'm going to mark over 1 inch. I don't want my card to be all the way over towards the side, so I'm going to mark it over 1 inch. I'm going to do the same thing top and bottom. So I'm going to come over here and mark over 1 inch. I'm going to go ahead and connect these points. Again, anytime that I'm making a line, I usually want to have 2 points that I'm measuring. It just makes your measurements much better. Okay, now we want this to be 6 inches wide altogether. It's already 8 inches, we've kind of verified that. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my 6 inches here. Come down here, I'm just doing the same exact thing. Again, I'm going for those 2 points of verification. All right, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to just connect these guys. So for my eagle eye people, you're going to notice that this side has less of a gutter than this side. That's okay. I did this on purpose. It's a lot easier for you to do measurements if you have one side that has 1 inch and one side that has 1.5 inches rather than both sides having 1 3/4 inches. It just makes your life a little easier. So we want to put a middle line in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and line this up, make sure that it's 6 inches wide, and I'm going to put a mark at 3 inches. Half of 6 is 3, so that's why we're putting the mark at 3 inches. So I'm just going to take my ruler here, mark 3 inches. There we go. And I'm going to connect these points. Now I want to use light pressure on this because this is more or less just to help me define where the middle is. So I'm just barely adding any pressure there. I'm going to do the same thing for the sides. So I'm going to come over to this side, and again, half of 8 inches tall here is going to be 4 inches. So we've got 4 inches there. Come over here, make my second mark. I've got 4 inches here. And again, I just want to make this as light as possible. I'm going to try to make this just very light, using very little pressure with my pencil. There we go. So I've got the outside of the card done. Now's a great time, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and erase these extra lines that I'm not going to end up using. I might save that for the very end. I kind of like having those structure lines just in case I need to remeasure something. So the next part is I want to have the inside part of the card that's going to have our face, or the face design that we're going to have in there. So I want there to be 1 inch on every side. So I want to come in 1 inch, in 1 inch, down 1 inch, and up 1 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this, but I'm going to kind of do 2 things at the same time. So I'm marking over 1 inch. I'm going to mark over 1 inch on this side too. So I marked the 1 inch mark, and I marked the 5 inch mark. Move my ruler up. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Put this so that it's on the 0 mark and it goes to the 6 mark. Mark the 1 inch, and the 5-inch. I'm marking both of those guys so that it ends up being an inch over. You can do it so that you put your ruler here and you mark over an inch. It just takes a little bit more time, and I don't tend to think of it as accurate, but you can still do that and it'll still get you the results you want. So for this line, I'm going to do a little bit light. I don't know where the top is supposed to begin or end, so I'm just going to do a light line, and you'll see what I mean in just a minute here. All right, so I've got these. They are light lines. Okay, now I want to go an inch from the top and an inch from the bottom, so I'm going to put this back over on the side of my card design here. Make sure I'm lined up as best as I can. I'm going to mark 7 inches, and I'm going to mark 1 inch. Okay, that way I have an inch down and an inch up. I'm going to slide my ruler over to this side, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to go ahead and mark 7 inch, 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect these guys. And again, I'm just going to use a light line here. Actually, for this one, I'm going to do dark, and I'm just going to go in between these two lines that I had just made. I can actually do that now. I would normally do this light if I didn't have these lines there, but I know where I want to start and stop. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to line my ruler up, and then just in between these two lines, these two light lines, I want my border on my suit to be, or on my card to be fairly dark. So that's why I'm doing it like this. Okay, and then I can go over these lines again. I'm going to darken this just a little bit more, like so. Bingo. I now have my card layout, and this is going to be really important for when we're actually designing the card. Anything outside of here, like this top corner, is usually where we put the card in the suit. So if you have a king of clubs or something like that, you're going to end up putting it here, and it'll be down here as well. And then everything inside here should actually be your face card itself or the numbers, whatever you're using. Now is a good time to go ahead and erase the mark that we won't use. So I definitely won't use this mark or this mark. And I probably won't use the middles, but I'm going to leave those there. Those are usually a pretty good guide point for me when I'm tracing these guys. So that concludes this part of the template. This part of the template is done. If you want to go ahead and get rid of some of these extra lines, you can. But we are actually going to go ahead and create what I consider the scrap paper so that we can do this the traditional way.